Infidelity is largely associated with a lot of conflict, marital distress, reduced marital quality, domestic abuse, and worst-case scenario, relationship dissolution or divorce. Couples who go into marriage counseling after infidelity report less commitment to their unions, as well as greater likelihood of distress and divorce. Gender significantly influences the relationship-related outcomes of infidelity, with women being more likely to respond by distancing themselves, while men respond with violence. People who are more satisfied with their relationships report greater remorse when they cheat. Spouses whose partner cheated and initiated divorce are more likely to be depressed than everyone else. The factors affecting relationship outcomes after infidelity include timing, marital quality, and the discussions that follow infidelity. In the context of marital quality, lower satisfaction and reduced commitment to working on the marriage raises the likelihood of separation. If cheating occurs early on in the marriage, before anyone has invested that much in the union, then the likelihood of separation is quite high. Talking openly facilitates recovery by providing the opportunity to answer some of the most serious questions, such as the length and level of emotional involvement, as well as any misinformation, including how both partners perceive the affair. Disclosure of too much information could be upsetting, and as such, it is important to read the room. For instance, details about sexual or romantic acts might be unnecessary in a couple seeking to recover after infidelity. The contextual factors that influence how couples respond to cheating include the threats of future infidelity, the type or extent of infidelity, the number of encounters, number of partners, and the interventions that follow discovery. Ongoing infidelity reduces the chances of recovery, especially if the cheater is likely to be in contact with the other partner. The cheater should terminate any form of contact with the other partner in the process of marriage counseling to raise the likelihood of any progress or growth. Individuals who are or were satisfied with their affair, either sexually or emotionally, are less likely to be remorseful or want to fix things, so have that at the back of your mind. Worth pointing out is the fact that men who primarily engage in sexual infidelity rarely leave their primary partner. Multiple betrayals, that is cheating with multiple partners or the same partner over a sustained period, reduce the likelihood of ever solving things because the threat of infidelity will always exist. Separation after divorce worsens the consequences of infidelity, especially on children. Some studies suggest that children raised by parents who divorced due to infidelity are more likely to develop insecure attachment styles in their relationships. Apart from strain on the marriage, infidelity also affects people on a personal level. Cheaters often experience shame, rage, depression, anxiety, a sense of victimization, and symptoms closely associated with post-traumatic stress disorders. Holding factors such as family and personal history constant, women who have been victims of infidelity report greater levels of depression compared to those who are equally distressed in their marriage. Women and people in marital therapy often experience the negative feelings of guilt, depression, and humiliation. The impact of infidelity on a person and their relationship vary based on the behavior and characteristics of the involved partner. The severity of a partner's reactions depends on a number of contextual factors, especially existing difficulties with self-esteem and trust, as well as the strength of the belief in monogamy and everything related. In other words, spouses who think of monogamy as a fundamental component of a union are more traumatized by infidelity. Even in instances where infidelity is allowed, such as those in open relationships, going against whatever foundations are set in the marriage, including falling in love with a new partner, causes distress. Gender is a significant predictor of how individuals respond, with guilt reactions being stronger in cheating wives than husbands. Depression on the part of one spouse is reported more on instances where the wife cheated compared to when the husband cheated. The gender of the cheater greatly influences whether a union is dissolved or not, with men's infidelity being more sanctioned than women's. Both men and women are vigilant in their effort to stop infidelity, but thoughts of marital dissolution or separation are more common with wives compared to husbands' infidelity. The highest risk of marital dissolution exists when the cheater is a young childless wife or when both partners cheated. The reasons for highest likelihood of separation following wives' infidelity is largely explained by greater sanctioning of infidelity for men. The socialization process informs differences in men's and women's perceptions of monogamy. Particularly, men perceive commitment and monogamy negatively, while the opposite is true for women, all mostly tied to the perceptions of men being more active than women. Traditional sex roles push men towards sexual relationships, while women focus on the emotions. Studies reporting men being more likely to cheat focus on sex, while those that include emotional infidelity find no differences between the gender in terms of engaging in infidelity. Men and women enter into extra-pair relationships for different reasons for the most part. On the one hand, men engage in infidelity for the desire of sexual diversity. On the other hand, women enter into extra-pair relationships in search of friendships and emotional connections. Sexual satisfaction is more important for husbands, while wives are more concerned with spouse compatibility. Men successfully separate sex and love, while women often equate sex with love, which explains their basing of relationships on emotional connections. When there are problems in the primary relationship, men blame the problems on poor sexual relations, while women blame them on the lack of affection. Male attitudes towards infidelity focus on sexual relations, while women's focus on spending time and keeping secrets. Women cite relationship satisfaction as the primary cause of engaging in infidelity, while men prioritize sexual dissatisfaction as the primary infidelity driver. Dating experience and permissive sexual attitudes do predict infidelity in men, while other factors predict infidelity in women, such as an inverse relationship between religiosity and infidelity. Liberal sexual attitudes also predict infidelity among women. Men cheat sexually, and also void of any emotions, more than women. According to the imagination hypothesis on jealousy, men are more upset by their partner engaging in sexual infidelity, while women are more upset by emotional infidelity. The hypothesis attributes the gender differences in responding to infidelity to men's explicit sexual imagery and women's romantic imagery. The assumption of the hypothesis is that, as long as men and women can imagine sexual and emotional infidelity clearly, then there shouldn't exist gender differences in responding to the different types of infidelity. However, men read into erotic statements faster than women, while women's fantasies and daydreaming episodes are filled with romance. Gender differences in imagination are also explained by other factors such as socialization, where most cultures are more accepting of men's than women's sexual expressiveness and freedom. The cultures have also placed barriers on women being sexually motivated, with the barriers including clitoridectomy or removal of the female clitorical hood, and flat-out violence. Reactions to infidelity, and the resultant probability of forgiveness, are deeply influenced by the negative outcomes of the act. The outcomes are different for men and women, which explains different reactions to infidelity by the sexes. Particularly, men's infidelity on the part of women leads to the loss of the man's resources, which could be diverted to the new woman and their children. Women bear the greater direct cost of reproduction in terms of actually carrying a baby to term and taking care of the offspring. Women's parental investment explains the need to seek and keep long-term mates. As such, emotional infidelity, which presents the threat of abandonment and diversion of resources to another woman, is of more concern to women, mostly conceptualized as the jealousy as a specific innate module hypothesis. The risk of resources being diverted to another woman and their children is especially true when the man is emotionally connected to the other woman, thereby making emotional infidelity more harmful to women. However, the dynamics of today's societies, especially the fact that women get to work and own resources, reduce the effects of negative fitness outcomes of the woman losing the man's resources as they are primed by societies today to gather their own resources. Women's resource-based insecurity as being the basis of their anger and jealousy when their man cheats is supported by studies reporting the fact that women are more likely to forgive a cheating man when they cheated with a prostitute as compared to when they cheat with an ex-girlfriend. Men don't get pregnant, and neither do they give birth, a phenomenon that makes them most vulnerable to cuckoldry, or paternity fraud, or raising children that are not their own without knowing. The fact that fertilization occurs internally in human females implies that men can never be certain of their offspring being theirs, with the certainty having to be tied to the hope and belief that their woman was faithful. Against this backdrop, the act of infidelity therefore becomes more harmful for men than it is for women, especially when a woman engages in sexual as opposed to emotional infidelity because of the increased risk of cuckoldry. The cuckoldry risk is very harmful to men's reproductive fitness, which in biology, is tied to the number of offspring a man could produce. This phenomenon explains why men are more vigilant and anxious about their partner's fidelity. Sexual infidelity and its harmful effects on men and women has been evidenced by the fact that men are more likely to forgive their women if they engaged in sexual activity with another woman, compared to when another man is involved. Speaking of women cheating with other women, same-sex relationships and heterosexual relationships, especially encounters between women, are perceived as common, acceptable, and even desirable. The desirable part for both men and women revolves around exploring, which explains why same-sex infidelity is driven by individual motivations than evolutionary goals. Some studies suggest that women demonstrate less acceptance and more negative responses for same-sex infidelity in heterosexual relationships, but both men and women report greater acceptance for same-sex compared to different-sex infidelity. The differences in gender responses is based on the perceived motivations for engaging in same-sex relationships. Perceiving the engagement of extra-pair same-sex relationships while in a heterosexual relationship as being justifiable informs blaming partners less for such behavior, thereby raising the likelihood of forgiving them. In summary, men do rate female infidelity as way worse in general. This phenomenon is supported by evolutionary biologists who argue that men are more upset by sexual infidelity, and women by emotional infidelity. Worth pointing out is the fact that women are more upset by infidelity that involves a more attractive rival. Not all is always lost when it comes to infidelity because some couples come back stronger, especially those who use cheating as an opportunity to resolve long-standing marital issues that were always ignored. Treatments developed to help couples through infidelity find that couples with a history of cheating struggle with distress at the start of therapy, but this gradually fades as therapy goes on. A lot of people who go into marriage counseling after cheating prefer that the therapist or whoever is attending to them deals with therapy directly, as opposed to widening the scope to include marital problems. However, root causes need to be addressed if a couple is supposed to recover fully. In the case of wanting to solve the infidelity issue, some studies suggest that the involved stages include dealing with the trauma resulting from the cheating first, then examining the contributing factors, and determining the steps towards moving forward, both behaviorally and emotionally. Exploring the factors contributing to infidelity, even though couples prefer dealing with cheating directly, seeks to reduce the likelihood of reasoned misinterpretation. Partners who go through therapy together report reduced signs of trauma, marital distress, secrecy, and increased signs of harmony and forgiveness.